to provide Ukraine with combat air capabilities, including supporting training to procuring F-16 fighter jets. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky joined the council via video link, and he stressed the urgency for stronger air power.
There is still much to be done. Ukraine's territory is big, and to make air defense results like last night's the rule throughout the country, we need additional air defense systems and missiles. We also need modern fighter jets, without which no air defense system will be perfect. And I am sure we will get there.
This comes as South Africa's president says Russia and Ukraine have also agreed to meet African leaders to discuss a peace plan to end the war in Ukraine. The African leaders' peace mission is being backed by African leaders of Senegal, Uganda, Egypt, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia. President Zelensky has previously stated that all Russian troops must leave his country for any peace deal to take place. Now, in news here at home, 1 in 5 adults are apparently finding it difficult to pay bills and credit card repayments at the start of the year. That's according to the Financial Conduct Authority. People struggling this way has increased by 3.1 million since May last year. The number of adults who missed bills or loan payments in at least 3 of the previous 6 months have increased by 1.4 million from 4.2 million. And 2 poultry workers in England have tested positive for bird flu, although there are no signs of human-to-human transmission. Both cases are believed to be linked to the same farm. The UK Health Security Agency is running a programme of testing workers who've come into contact with the infected birds and have launched an investigation. Test results show one of the workers infected is likely to have been contaminated after inhaling the virus. It's unclear if the second person who was infected did so after inhalation or whether they were infected in some other way. Those are the latest news headlines. You are up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Leo Kearson. Joining me tonight to shift the gold from the mud of Wednesday's papers are good old boys Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. How are you both doing?
Yeehaw!
Yeah, very enthusiastic there. That's what we like to see.
I've had a coffee.
You've had a coffee at this time of night. Oh my God, you should have checked with your wife first. Anyway, that's the small chat out of the way, small talk. Let's have a quick look at the front pages of Wednesday's papers. The Daily Mail has working from home fuels UK's sick note crisis. The Telegraph has free speech at risk in trans row, Oxford Dons tell students. And there's a picture there of Michael Douglas getting kissed by his wife and his daughter, which is nice. The Guardian has alarm as ministers target housing standards to cut asylum hotel bills. The Times leads with Starmer, I'll allow more homes on the Greenbelt. The Express has PM, you must let us deport illegal migrants. And finally, the Metro has 2.5 million are too sick to work. Kicking off this in-depth look into the papers with the Telegraph, Josh.
Yep, so as you said, we had the picture there of Michael Douglas being kissed by his wife and daughter. I don't know if that's him sort of going, ooh, this is exciting. It's a bit of a strange photo.
I think he's a bit old for that.
Well, Josh, you would think it's a bit old for that. It's a little bit dodgy. There's also a thing at the top before we get to the main paper, which is the evil of idleness plaguing Britain. People would rather live on benefits than pick fruit.
I'd rather live on benefits than pick fruit.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
I know I'm Scottish,
if you ever picked fruit before, it's a really tough job.
Any job that involves actually doing something tends to be very difficult.
But picking fruit in particular is a very, very
What
tough
fruit grows in Britain
job.
other than apples?
Strawberries,
berries.
Cute.
They're hard to pick.
Yeah,
Anyway.
ground-based fruit especially.
Yeah.
And all the little thorns and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a slightly annoying...
I'd rather be on my phone, really.
article, yeah.
Right?
But the main thing they're going with is free speech is at risk in trans row, Oxford Dons tell students. So this is Oxford University. Their debating society has invited Professor Kathleen Stock, and because she has these really like disgusting opinions like men and women are two different biological sexes and that trans women...
Josh, that's not disgusting. Why would you say
Well,
it's
it's horrific.
That just sounds like basic
horrific stuff. Well, yeah.
If you're under 22, it is scary to think that you have to commit for the next, I don't know, 40 or 50, 80 years to one biological sex.
I know, it's horrible.
People want, a bit of, diversity.
But I guess this is the difference between biological sex and gender, because biological sex depends on your chromosomes, which are, it's very difficult to actually change your chromosomes. You've got to...
Well, it is now, but...
To go into cells.
But who knows? At some point,
Gender is just a made-up thing that...
You're very old. At some point, we could probably buy a microwave at a petrol station that'll change your...
Well, we're not there yet, but why this article is slightly encouraging, sorry, just getting back to it, is that finally some academics are actually standing up and going, wait a minute, this is wrong. These little teenage 18-year-old idiots, they don't get to determine free speech at one of our our country's leading cultural institutions and educational institutions. So 40 academics, including Professor Richard Dawkins and Professor Nigel Bigar, have basically signed this letter going, wait a minute, this is wrong. And actually, finally, we're seeing people standing up for mostly women be able to defend their sex-based rights.
And free speech as a core principle of debate, which it has to be, because, if an idea can't be challenged, you can't trust that idea, because somebody could just say, well, that idea hasn't been questioned. It's just been accepted as an ideology, and nobody's been allowed to logic test it.
Yeah, but you two talk over me on this show all the time. What about my ideas? Free speech, whatevers. Anyway, in The Guardian, can we move on from that?
Yes, we can.
Tedious story.
Scott, tell us what's in The Guardian.
There's an alarm as ministers are targeting housing standards to cut asylum hotels bills. What's her name wants to get, Suella, wants to get people out of hotels and into private accommodation to give hotels a break. But what she also wants to do is make it possible for landlords to not have a license to rent, which means if they don't go through the licensing process, then they don't have to have a certain amount of standards. So they can squeeze as many people into a room as they like.
Yeah.
They don't need to provide, say, electricity or hot and cold water. They also don't need to provide anything...
Fire alarms?
Well, there's that. But any sort of independent security for different families. So they can squeeze 3 families, 2.5 families into accommodation.
Great. It sounds like it's going to save me some money.
They don't think, well, a lot of protesters and some conservatives think this is actually going to cost money, because what it's going to do is it's going to leave people bereft of proper housing, and they're going to start doing things like trying to raise money they can from... They're going to start begging on the streets, and they start
and I guess people
going on trains, trying to get change for people, and that's going to cause all sorts of problems.
And people could get ill because the conditions aren't sanitary.
There's that. I hate saying the word begging, but yeah.
We've seen outbreaks of diphtheria amongst illegal immigrants, so yeah.
Yeah, this is clear. A government spokesperson said, by temporarily removing this licensing requirement, we'll be able to acquire more suitable long-term accommodation while continuing to meet our legal duty of care. So essentially, by getting rid of all the rules, then we're not breaking the rules.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Genius.
It's a good system. Why didn't the government think of this before?
Braverman wants to put asylum seekers, on redundant cruise ships, barges, and ferries, while Rishi Sunak is using a meeting of the Council of Europe in Finland right now to ask the European Court of Human Rights to block asylum seekers' deportations.
Yeah, but I think something had to be done to make Britain less of a sort of beacon to illegal immigrants, because,
putting you on the TV every night is a big help.
What, me? What about you? What about you with your bald bonds?
Come here.
When was that suit made? Oh my
They're
God,
just immigrants.
Died in that suit.
They're just...
you can buy suits new, Josh.
No, they're just immigrants.
But
there's no point putting the word illegal in front of them, because then you fall into the trap that they're trying to create right now, and you're smarter than that. But what actually Rishi Sunak is trying to do is get the UK out of the ECHR, and by doing so, that's going to eliminate all sorts of rights for people. He's actually saying, unless you let us deal with immigrants the way we want, we're out.
But we need to deal with it, is what I'm saying.
Instead of calling them illegal immigrants, though, just call them immigrants. They're just immigrants, Leo.
Illegally, then they're illegal.
There is no legal process for them to follow, else they would follow it.
There are legal processes.
There are none. The UK has not set up anything.
If there are no legal processes for people to follow, how do people get here?
illegally.
But that is not true.
That's the point you're making. It is true.
And also, one of my friends was here as an illegal immigrant, and he came back in, and we've got quite a porous.
Well, then he was just an immigrant to begin with, and he was when he came back in too.
No, I mean, I think if you've got to have rules to follow, because everybody that comes across the channel, they're risking their lives, they're jumping in front of
and the British government needs to provide routes for these people to take that are easily accessible and affordable for them.
But wouldn't it be better if people sought refuge in countries that are perhaps closer to the country that they're from?
There's nothing constitutionally that says they have to.
There's assimilable.
Well, currently there's no law that says they must. They can go to whatever country they like. They don't have to stop in the first country they're in.
27 safe countries.
Yes, they can.
Get to
yes, they certainly can.
One of the things that the criminal gangs that are bringing people across the channel, one of the things that they were doing is advertising on TikTok using footage of the hotels, saying, look at this 4-star hotel. The British government is going to put you up in this, and the British taxpayers are such mugs, they don't even mind.
But that is obviously not a solution as well. There are better solutions, I'm sure, out there. Just the British government is providing them right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they need to do something, and it's nice to see the government at least trying to do something, even though this sounds...
So they get a 4-star, and I get juries in Brighton? Is that what you're saying? This is so messed up.
It's been really nice to not be involved in this argument.
Coward.
Moving on, we've got the iNews now, Josh, with a slightly worrying story.
Indeed, immigration.
Oh, God.
No.
This is immigration
viruses, yes. Bird flu spreads to humans in the UK. Look, they put like a picture of I believe that's chicken of some kind, a hen. I don't know if there are different types of chicks.
It's a rooster, I think.
It's a rooster. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not down with it. I know them when they're plucked.
The cockerel.
Cockerel. And,
you know them when they're what?
Plucked.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. But there's no evidence of human-to-human transmission, so they said, oh, don't worry about it. So basically, two people working on a farm, they had it was asymptomatic, and then now it's gone, so it's not even in there, it's not there. They are doing some track and trace and all of that, but there's no evidence. There's evidence of it going from mammal to mammal, but there's no evidence to humans. Last year, there were 11 people around the world who contracted avian flu.
Right.
So I think it's great that we've got 2 of them in the UK.
But how are they getting it if they can't contract it from...
Kissing. I think they're kissing, eating, or having intimate relations with...
Probably just if you're working on a poultry farm, you drop your sandwich, it lands on a chicken, you pick it up, it's got bird influenza on it. But I mean, this being front page news, isn't it the case that we've just got a lot of virus scientists who are worried about their funding getting cut because COVID's gone away. So they're like, oh, but what about this? There's bird flu.
I see so many people with masks on still. Is COVID here or not? I'm confused.
Yeah.
Was it ever here?
I don't know.
Yeah, someone would say some crazy, but not me.
The people still wearing masks. It's like when there's Japanese soldiers who'd come out of the jungle, like 20 years after the war finished, and they still think it's going on. They've got the gun and everything.
Maybe they should have a little makeup. Maybe they feel insecure about their face. I know a couple of guys that look good with rouge. I'm looking at them right now. A little bit of eyeliner, maybe, or a blow dryer. I don't know. Maybe a mask is good.
They're horrifically ugly. Anyway, finally for this section, what does the Daily Star have in the cover, Scott?
Apparently emojis can be misleading, and it's best if you're in love or looking for love to go after the romantic emojis like the heart emoji and not the aubergine emoji, which I'm never sure what that...
Yeah, I was going to ask you, no offence.
Are you vegan? Is that what it means?
No,
what does it mean?
No one was going to go with the
I
vegan.
think it's all about a man's member. That's what it meant to represent.
It doesn't look... Why would it not be a banana? Why
it's the closest you can get, because no one looks like a banana.
No, mine does not look like an aubergine.
Well, it shouldn't look like a banana either.
Really? Does
you shouldn't be able to peel it.
Is it yellow? What? It looks like a banana?
Well, mine doesn't look like... Mine looks like an apple.
Oh, right. Mine's like a street cone. But anyway, mine's orange and bendy. But yeah, this is what you're meant to go after the romantic ones, unless you want to perv. Like they're showing a picture of what someone who kind of looks pervy in the.
You should never send any emoticons, emojis, or whatever like that.
I like that Nigel Farage's picture with his mouth wide open, pointing toward the
do you think
aubergine.
That's deliberate?
That's what that's about. Yeah, I think that's funny.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the front pages, well and truly excavated. Join us in a few minutes for immigration, Brexit, and culture wars. Finally, we're giving these topics some coverage. See you then.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Leo Kearson. To my left is Josh Howie, and to his left is Scott Capurro, and they're sitting over there. Anyway, let's look inside the papers, kicking things off with the Times, and Rishi is giving us an early taste of a Labour government, Josh.
They sure are. I don't know what Labour are going to do when they get in. It'll just be like...
yeah. Well, I think they're going to be slightly more right-wing.
I don't see what choices they've got left, because we have the biggest tax rise in history here, where now 2.1 million people are being dragged into the higher rate of tax. It's raising 26 billion a year, which is more than when they increased double what when they increased VAT to 15% in 1979, and this is a huge deal. And the thing, just very quickly, what's happened is, because they're freezing the rate, inflation's going up, and they're freezing those rates. What happened is people are sort of by stealth moving into, because the inflation, their salary increases. So now you're going to have some nurses, teachers, maybe some GB News presenters, dragged into these and paying considerably more tax.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing to see what this country has happened.
Yeah, well, if the 40p rate was at the same, if it was the same proportion of people paying the higher rate of tax as it was a generation ago, only people earning over £100,000 would be paying it. So I mean, it really shows that the government is just seizing more and more money, and this comes on top of hikes in tax across other areas like corporation tax. But taxes can actually reduce the amount of money that goes to the exchequer, because people enter schemes. Yeah, they spend less. They try to avoid avoid tax. They use offshore accounts or whatever they can do. It's less of an incentive to do work. I mean, there's no point going and taking a gig in Hull and driving to Hull if you're just going to have to, pay more than half of it in tax. And we've seen, with things like that. I mean, the Tories were going to bring in a tax on private schools, but that would just mean that people brought their kids out of private school, and then the taxpayer would have to pay to educate those kids in the state system. So it would end up costing more than it raised.
But this is affecting a lot of people. And the other thing is that people are getting caught in these weird things where they're earning just over.
Yeah.
And actually, it's more than 40p. It's more like 55p because they suddenly start losing child benefits and various other things.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is. It is. So it's a problem now for our country. Obviously, we have to make up a lot of money that Tories threw away by bringing someone as a Prime Minister for a month.
But the thing is, if we owe it to ourselves, can we just let it go?
I don't think we do just owe it to ourselves, though.
All right.
I think we've got an enormously cumbersome, burdensome public sector full of equality, diversity and inclusion managers.
Yeah, but that's not the debate.
Local authority.
I'm not saying that doesn't exist. That's not why we're in this position.
Yeah.
We're in this position because
but you just pinned it all in Liz Truss. I mean, Liz Truss is a blip. I mean, that's...
Well, that was billions of lost pounds.
Billions isn't,
Well, this is raising 26 billion, so some of those billions are from her economic policies for 1 month, and we're talking another decade of mismanagement of this country.
We're paying for a really
exhausted
king and queen. They are so tired, those two. They're so tired and they're so rich, and they're expensive. Why don't we put them to sleep and take their money?
Well, that's a very Russian way of looking at the problem. Anyway, moving on to the Mail, and people have got slightly lazier this year, Scott.
Well, because of what we're talking about, apparently people are working less because they don't want to pay higher taxes, maybe, but we have a higher unemployment rate this year in March than we did the previous year by a very small margin, but still the Office for National Statistics states that we're down about 4% annually in real terms. So what it means is fewer people are working and salaries are going up by about 4 to 7%, depending on the sector you're in. So with higher salaries and fewer people working, more taxes being paid, more people are kind of staying home. And I think they're trying to urge people to get into offices more. But I think people are finding that if they stay home and they work a little bit less, they make a little bit more. So
yeah,
but
it makes unemployment look a bit higher than it should be.
This is quite a confusing article because it's like employment is going up, but unemployment's going down. You sort of think of it like a balance. Like surely if one goes up, but they're sort of going, well, they're both going up. Yeah, and so it's really, and I don't claim to be a very clever person, but I literally spent 20 minutes staring at the sentence.
So I think what
this means the number of those neither working nor looking for work continues to fall, although the number of people not working due to long-term sickness rose again. I don't know what's going on.
It's okay, calm down. It's because
very confusing.
It's because the nature of work is changing in the UK. And we're going less agricultural and less industrial into IT and other sorts of jobs. So because those jobs are shifting and people who are skilled in one field of work are not skilled in the progressive field of work I'm talking about, then they are suddenly unemployed, but they're still employable.
Yeah.
But they can't find work in their field.
I still don't get it.
Literally in their field. Anyway, the Mirror next with the most misleading headline I've ever seen, Josh.
Yeah, Nigel Farage admits Brexit has failed, with capital letters, as he hints at political comeback. So
UKIP in capitals and failing.
And so there could be a 7 to 9 slot available here, Leah, if you want to. Should we pitch our mud wrestling show?
I thought we were doing it right now.
So he told BBC Two's Newsnight, what I do think is that we haven't actually benefited from Brexit economically, what we could have done. So, and essentially the Tories have utterly mismanaged it.
Yeah, he's saying Brexit didn't fail. What he got in was right, but the way they've done it is terrible.
Right.
And he blames various politicians. He says they should be sacked. We should start over. But he also feels at this point it's too late anyway.
But although the experts would argue, and this is what they argued before Brexit, that no one would ever be able to do it right because there were fundamentally economically unsound decisions that would have to be made for it to go through, which is what we saw. So, and the other thing is, and he really does hit the nail on the head, though, where he basically says our politicians are about as useless as the commissioners in Brussels were. And that was always my reason for being a Remainer.
But wasn't he in Brussels at the time?
Well, exactly. Well, he was part of it, so he saw it. But my thing was always like, everyone's useless. We're ruled by people you know, whether it's ruled by Europe, ruled by people over here, we're still ruled by incompetent people.
So you've just got to pick your flavour of incompetent?
Well, no, I just don't think we have any power in. So I just was like, I'd rather just be able to get through passport control quickly.
Yeah.
That was my reason.
But I mean, looking back, I mean, I voted Remain, but now that I see who it annoyed, I wish I'd voted Leave. It annoyed loads of the people I really want to annoy. And I don't really care about the economic strife. I mean, it's not as if we're just going to return to living in mud huts and eating turnips. I think, you know, a couple of percentage points or whatever, that's worth it to annoy people with blue hair.
I know, it's not. Well, we've had this discussion.
And also, you're talking about passport control. What about duty-free? We've got duty-free back. We fly to Ireland, you get duty-free. 10 quid for a bottle of gin.
Is that where you were last week?
Anyway, moving on, we've got the Times now, and if you're alarmed by net migration hitting 1 million, don't worry, soon you'll be replaced with someone who does like it, Scott.
You know, I've done the net migration story twice in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It's starting to hurt my feelings. I'm a migrant. The point is, it just sounds like three white men pointing fingers. I just think this story is so tired. Look, the thing is, net migration hit a record, it says here in the Times, which fumbles figures, I have to say. They hit a record of 504,000 last year. I've written this down in pencil because I remember it from last week. 560,000 people emigrated from the UK last year. So really, we were down in numbers, to be honest.
No.
Yes,
net migration. No, we weren't.
Yes,
no, net
we were.
migration. So
no. We were down in numbers.
Scott,
the point I'm making is, even if there are 1 million people coming into the country,
we're not seeing a net outflow. Then we wouldn't be talking about it.
Leo, this number is projected. It's to scare people, that 1 million people. They're not here. It's a projected number.
But the numbers been rising
because there's a war in Ukraine, because of Afghanistan. A lot of these people coming in, by the way, are employees they're hiring for the NHS. They don't mention any of that here. They just want to scare you.
No, it's not. I mean, we understand that immigration is, you know, it can be a great thing, but there is. It's not being controlled. There is a lot of cross-channel migration that is way out of control. I mean,
and those people need to be staying
out of control.
But those are not.
I'm going to get involved
numbers.
in this, in that the parts coming over isn't what we're really talking about. The 700,000 to 1 million people who are going to come in.
Are not involved.
No, they're included in it, but they're a very small part of it. What this really is, as you say, people coming over to work in our NHS, which is understaffed.
Yes.
These are students who are coming over, paying a huge amount of money into our economy, foreign students, and then staying and benefiting our economy.
But
so those are the big.
Let's look at the students.
They're bringing over some of their family. I know about that. And they
they're bringing
more
exactly. So I mean, why would a student need to bring his family family over? What, you need your mum to do your clothes?
But this is
when I went to university, I didn't bring my family with me.
We're talking about 500,000 foreign students coming in. They are literally bringing billions of pounds into this country, right? And so some of them,
why do we need? We're a rich country. We don't need to be taking all this money from overseas.
We're not.
Wouldn't it be better for these poor countries?
Let's pay more than 40%.
Wouldn't it? No, listen, Josh. Josh, listen.
How has this story been pulled out of my hands? I didn't get to finish my part of it yet. I'm saying, look, they can go ahead and write a rule that controls the number of people a student can bring over. It's fine. But what she says here is contentious. It's confrontational. It is not a policy. Putting people on barges is not a policy.
But this is not what that says in this article.
No, but that's what Sola Braverman has suggested for other
This is about closing the loopholes that allow students to...
Which is perfectly fine.
Yeah, so we need to close those loopholes. It's not...
and you didn't want to go to school with your... You didn't want to bring your family to university anyway.
Yeah, no, exactly. Okay. That's what I was saying.
Some people have nice families.
The
Times now, and suspicious timings around the SNP search warrants, Josh.
Police wanted Nicola Sturgeon's search warrant during the leadership fight. So if you look at the actual dates, they went for the requested on March 20th, yet it wasn't actually given until April 3rd. 2 weeks. That's a long time. Like if you're like, hey, we've got to find this immediate thing. Let's get her. Let's give them a couple of weeks.
Yeah, give them some time to move it and bury it.
Let's let that garden just grow a little bit more before we get those shovels out. And so there's no suggestion. Wink, wink. They cut away from me just too quickly there before I did the wink to cover. And the police we can't possibly comment. But there is this thing in Scotland where we've sort of talked about this before about how close it's a small country.
It's a small country, and also the police forces have been centralised into one force.
And the SNP are gangsters. There's that too. They are. They're gangsters.
Yeah. So they do.
They're human traffickers.
But you've got the
cabinet. For the sake of balance, they're not all gangsters.
The cabinet minister is also the head of the prosecution service. Now they're saying here very very clearly there's no evidence that this means anything.
Right? That it wasn't really anything other than
at the same time, you just go, it's such a small country. This is also in the media. It just looks very, very weird.
Yeah.
Can we say that?
Yeah, we can say
that. I don't know what we can say.
How come the SNP likes to put their former leaders in jail? Why is that? That's happened a few times now.
Well, they tried to put Alex Salmond in jail. In fact, I think they changed the law to try and do it, like they did with Trump, funnily enough. Anyway, we're at the halfway point. Come back in a few moments for hard sats, hard billionaires, and hard sorority girls. You'll see what we're talking about. See you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Times now with the news that English kids are total nerds. Scott.
Well, they're the best readers in the Western world, outdoing Finland. They may not be happy, but they can read. The ranking is actually down by a point from the previous ranked period in 2016, but it's up compared to other countries. A lot of countries fell because of COVID restrictions and kids couldn't go to schools. The only countries that really rose were Hong Kong and Singapore.
Right.
Britain sort of flatlined. Everyone else fell down on numerous points.
Yeah.
Actually, the girls did worse in this one compared to 2016.
Yes!
Boys did better. But a lot of boys that didn't do well said they just don't like reading.
Yeah. Right.
And girls overall prefer reading, but they didn't do as well on the tests this time.
Right, because we're used to girls outperforming boys academically.
In every way, yeah, pretty much. But not this time. And so they're concerned about getting girls to read because they think that being a good reader and being focused and being able to concentrate that way has a positive benefit on all sorts of your life.
Absolutely. There's so much evidence that the amount you read during your youth And so I keep on telling my kids, I'm like screaming at, rather reading this and seeing the evidence of how, like, even reading to your children and the impact it can have on their later life, and it makes me feel guilty for being here missing bedtime, and I'm constantly just trying to get the kids to read. It's really hard. And 4 of them are boys. The girl is like, she wants to read, and the boys, and you sort of think having lots of books around, seeing me read and seeing my wife read, it's like a cultural thing, but it's so hard to find.
Maybe screaming at them is scaring them.
Well, that's also because I get so frustrated because I know
really?
how
I would never have
great
thought, Josh.
That
yeah, strange.
Possible.
Strange, but this,
I mean, this is an incredible success for the Tory party, isn't it, Josh?
I didn't read that bit.
Actually, again, the point they dropped a point. But anyways,
but that's it. England, 42 out of 57 countries.
Great.
When it comes to and in terms of how low we are in terms of actually enjoying reading.
Oh, so we don't enjoy it, but we get good at it anyway. That's the British spirit right there. Anyway, moving on, we've got The Guardian now reporting on a school exam that made some children cry. Did it get their pronouns wrong, Josh?
Well, it actually it didn't make my son cry, but he did these tests last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so UK Schools Minister promises to review the SATs paper that left pupils in tears. Not my son, who's a real good guy. There's nothing wrong with crying, RT, if you want to cry. But he came back and he was like, every day I was like, how are the stats? How's it been? And he came and said, yeah, people were really upset and the teachers were freaking out. They couldn't believe it was a reading test, and it just was, even for the teachers, they were like going, this doesn't make any sense. And they were,
oh, really?
Yeah, it was a really super duper tough. All these teachers are complaining, all these parents, but it's like at some schools it seems like people have been left traumatised by it. I wouldn't necessarily suggest you have to go that far, but at the same time, they've been working hard for the last year.
I think there's so much pressure that they crumble when it just looks like they're going to fail because they're so frightened of failure. Is that what it is?
Well, that's the gist of it. I mean, they've been just working towards this, and then you want to feel like that. You don't want to you work really hard and you get somewhere and you're like, it's all gibberish basically.
Yeah, or gibberish. Maybe gibberish. Maybe there's a problem at home.
If there's a word you're going to mispronounce, it should be that one.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's quite reassuring to hear that some school exams are tough.
Yeah.
Because the sort of message I get is that schools they sometimes coach kids to pass exams.
I assume it's all finger painting.
But it's got to be passable as well.
Yeah.
Tough is good, but when it's impenetrable,
I don't know, get them used to the feeling of failure. It'll suit them for the future. Yeah. Anyway, we've got The Express now with a billionaire revealing how young people can succeed in life. Is it by having him as a dad?
Yeah,
Scott?
This guy, billionaire mogul, John, I'm going to try with this, is a Greek name, Katsimadidis. Yeah. He's 74. He owns Christie's. It's a market chain in Manhattan. He's a bit of a problem himself. He's run for mayor of New York, he said he could have beaten Obama in the first election, gotten a lot of trouble for that from his own party. He's the head of the Republican political party in Manhattan, so he has 2 members, his daughter and his son. And they both work for him as well. He also threatened to expel all the graduating class of the Stern Business School, which his daughter graduated from, because they were Asian of origin.
That doesn't sound very nice.
Yeah, so we're going to kick them out of the country anyway, so why educate them?
Jeez.
So it's that guy. It's that rich guy who feels that way.
I never heard of him.
He's in the Forbes 500. He's quite well known in the US.
Well, they don't mention that in the article. But
no, I found all that myself.
Right.
So he went on to say that kids are never going to achieve anything if they're on TikTok too much. He said, I can point to a failure. That's a kid who's on a screen all the time. He did pretty well as a kid, got a good job. His mother pushed him, and he's doing well now. And now he's telling everyone that you have to do a little bit of everything to succeed, including be racist, bigoted, and hire your kids.
Right. But he did say also that he said you've got to identify windows of opportunity, like when he invested $5 million into real estate.
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell my 13-year-old son. Just invest $5 million into real estate and you'll be a billionaire.
And the story is that he was doing it in the 70s when no one was investing in real estate in Manhattan, and he made a lot of money. Good for him.
As Trump did as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they're really good friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. The Telegraph now with evidence of inverse snobbery in our elite universities, Josh.
This is an interesting story. Private school pupils more likely to get into Cambridge if they move to state sixth form first. So essentially, we've got parents gaming the system.
What choice do they have?
Because they're talking now about how certainly these Oxford, Cambridge universities they believe that they're penalising students who go to public school. So this is a way of sort of setting them up, and then at the last minute, kind of pulling a switcheroo, and then they go, oh look, and then the universities go, oh look at us, our numbers of state school pupils are going up, aren't we amazing? When really, actually, it's a bunch of posh kids like myself in disguise. I wish my parents had done that one.
Are you posh? The disguise is a bit too good, Josh.
Yeah.
Really? You don't see it? Okay, I thought the way I looked down on you was perfectly fair.
Yeah, we see this. In fact, we see this in America as well, Scott, where Asian kids don't get a fair crack. It's not a meritocracy because they excel at certain subjects, so they have less chance. They've got to reach a higher threshold to get university places.
Well, I think it's complicated in the US too, because even the public universities are incredibly expensive now and feel like private universities, even though they're not meant to be. So I think also parents move. I have a lot of friends who have sold their homes and moved to a neighborhood where the schools are better but are public. So it looks as though their kids have done well in a public school. In the US, public meaning government-funded school.
Yeah.
And there's all that going on.
So that's the same kind of thing as this article.
Yeah, my sister had joined, and then kids had to do a lot of extracurricular stuff in the US. My niece had to go to a Lutheran church and get involved in all that garbage in order to get into the university she wanted to go to. So there's a lot of that going on as well. And sports really helps kids to universities, because it helps universities raise money. Because apparently the tuitions aren't enough. I think a lot of the problem is a lot of these universities are raising money too with investment. And if you start investing money, you start losing money and have to make up for it.
Well, you've got to pay investments back,
you do.
I guess, with a return. I mean, that's the trouble we saw with private finance initiatives in this country. Moving on, we've got the Mail now with some female students having to deal with the consequences of their own terrible opinions.
Yes, speaking of which, at University of Wyoming, sorority sisters say they feel vulnerable about trans women and who peeps at them. There's a guy who's trying to get into the Kappa Kappa Gamma girls.
He's in.
His name is Artemis Langford. He's 21 years old. He's 6'2" and weighs 260 pounds, which is about 10, 15, 17 stone or something. It's huge. It's large.
A dainty lady.
Yeah, I've seen his photo. And he's made no attempt to undergo any treatment to become a woman. He's not on any medication. He doesn't really...
He's put a dress on?
No.
He changed his pronouns in his Twitter bio.
Yes, he did. He wears a bit of makeup, and that's about it. He likes to sit in the sorority house after hours, have dinner and lunch with the girls, and then he sits with a pillow on his lap and watches them walk
there we go. We've got a photo. Which one is it?
Could
it be the one who's 2 foot taller than the rest of them?
He's Bigfoot to the left of the window.
It's the one with the erection, I think.
Yeah, he's Caitlyn Jenner. He does tend to get an erection watching the girls walk around. They know it. And a lot of these girls have chosen this Kappa Kappa Gamma because it's its own house and they want to feel safe there.
Right.
And now they don't. They've also, though, the problem is in 2019, they signed an agreement that said, we welcome all LGBTIQ plus people in, including people who identify as female.
Well, there you go. There you go. That's what happened.
But these girls didn't sign it. That's these specific girls who are now suing.
Well, they weren't part of the sorority.
And they've been told to get out, basically. Said, if you don't agree that you're a bigot, get out.
Well, when they read that Kappa Kappa Gamma agreement, when they were applying for it, when they're sorority girls themselves, they should have known that this might happen, or they should have been able to predict it.
But anybody that brought it up would have been condemned as a bigot and told it would never happen. Obviously, it then immediately happens. I respect this guy for gaming the system like that. I mean, why not?
I think his favourite film is Animal House.
Well, and weirdly,
scene at the beginning.
He has an innate interest in trains, ironically, and there's a word for that I can't pronounce. You're obsessed by trains. Right. It's a really intense word. And it's got a lot of vowels in the... but also, he wants to be a civil rights lawyer.
Maybe he's transgender.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got a final breather before the madness in the last section, with Martha Stewart looking fit with a fake English accent, drinking an anti-capitalist coffee. See you in 2 minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I have walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Metro now, and WhatsApp is introducing a feature for adulterers, Josh.
Basically, that's exactly what it's doing. WhatsApp will now let you lock and hide intimate conversations. Now, they're saying we think this feature will be great for people who have a reason to share their phones from time to time with a family member, aka wife. All those special moments when someone else is holding your phone at the exact moment an extra special chat arrives. Hey, are we meeting later tonight or whatever? So it's, yeah, this is one of the many new features that Zuckerberg's adding to it, end-to-end encryption being one of the things, obviously, but there's disappearing messages, screenshot blocking. This all just sounds super-duper dodgy. Like,
he wants to cheat on his wife, I guess. He does.
Yeah.
That's what he wants.
Yeah, it sounds like that's...
Do you think that's specifically why he set it up?
He's been buffing up. He's done MMA.
Karate.
He's obviously looking to play the field a bit.
I'm sure he gets hit on all the time.
Yeah, he's a rich guy.
Pretty much.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess it'd be nice to know that only you, the FBI, and all the security services can see those messages.
Yeah. Well, that's it. But so now they'll have it'll be everything. If you allocate it, you press a button, it will go into a special folder that can only be accessed via another fingerprint or whatever.
He lives next to a very cruisy park in San Francisco, too. I know exactly where he lives.
Right.
So maybe he wants to go for a walk every once in a while and see what he can find, right?
Go looking for badgers.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Some sort of thing.
Moving on, we've got the Mail now, and an anti-capitalist cafe has successfully recreated communism by failing to succeed, Scott.
Well, they're anarchists, actually. The French would be very offended by that statement. There's an anti-capitalist cafe in Toronto where patrons would pay what they can, and it's shut down after a year in business because it failed to make enough money. Gabriel Sims-Fewer ran the cafe, and pity him, he's ginger, and bald, which is, the irony, as if being ginger.
Yeah, no wonder he went to an extremist ideology.
Yeah, nothing wrong with being bald.
Well, he says, he put a quote online, he said, he said, F the rich, F the police, F the state, F the colonial death camp that we call Canada.
Canada's a colonial. Canada's like the wokest, nicest, cuddliest country in the world.
Not enough for this ginger idiot.
But for some reason, that didn't sell any coffee.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, actually, the funny thing is, he did sell coffee, and he charged for the coffee, and they were very expensive. But he did that to make up for the money he wasn't getting paid for other things. So he charged like $7 Canadian, which is like £1.50 for a cappuccino, which is a lot for them.
So that's essentially socialism.
It is.
Charging too much for the people who don't want to.
Yeah, and then people complained about that online and said, this guy's ripping you off. Don't go in for a coffee because he'll charge you too much. And then, of course, the business failed because it's just a bad business plan. A lot of cafes in Canada and Australia and parts of America, too, were doing pay what you can for certain food during the pandemic. And there's a cafe in California called Pandera that opened 5 Panderas, a bakery and breakfast cafe, saying pay what you can for the entire meal. Those 5 cafes closed after a few years, but they did what they could, which was admirable.
Yeah.
But they had a backup plan because they had a chain of businesses that were successful. This was this only guy's outlet.
This guy sounds just like the most nasty, horrible person.
I think you had to listen to him to get the food.
Isn't it funny how the lefty people who say we must change society and share and be nice to people are there, and he was saying the Queen, I'm glad the Queen's dead and all this horrible stuff.
And he probably doesn't wash his hands either.
Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Anyway, moving on, we've got the Mail again, and American teenagers have discovered a new way to be pretentious, Josh.
Why are Gen Z Americans slipping into British accents?
Oi, mate, why is it happening?
That's me being American, doing a British accent.
You sound just like Dick Van Dyke at work.
Well, thank you very much, mate. So it's become very popular because of online various different things. I suppose it makes them all sound very cool and clever, like British people.
They obviously haven't actually been to Britain.
No, not at all. But when I go to America, I ham it up. Like, I mean, already I'm there. I take it to like Prince Harry levels. Like, oh, hello, I'm from London. You know, they love it.
They don't understand a word you're saying.
No,
I think people are just saying in it. They're just doing the in it thing. That's all.
You think it is?
Yeah.
Well, whatever. They say it's because it makes them sort of classy.
Yeah. You can always spot an American pretending to be British because they've got teeth.
Also, they've got a lot more accents over here than over there.
Yeah, you go 10 minutes down the road in Scotland and you can't understand what people are saying. It's insane. Anyway, moving on, we've got The Guardian now, and she's famous, and we've got Martha Stewart, who's famous for baking, so it's only natural that she should get her buns out, Scott.
She's on the cover of Sports Illustrated this month in a bathing suit.
We got
in several bathing suits, actually. She looks marvelous. She's got a nice rack, I must say. And that's
Can we see it now?
Yeah, let me
see
your rack.
To see it.
There we go.
Oh,
good, right?
Whoa!
Wow, that actually does actually.
I didn't realise they're going to show that much flesh.
Yeah. Now she's had a bit of work done, but of course she has money. Why not? And actually, if I walked by her on the street and she smiled at me, I would not recognize her as Martha Stewart. But then, oh well. She likes the way she
81 years old.
Yeah, and had an interesting life. She went to jail for a while, didn't she?
Yeah, they don't mention that in the article. Weird, isn't it? Strangely.
That's where she met some of her friends that now look just like her. It's weird. They all hang out and have the same plastic surgeon, and some of them have boy names. But anyway, yes, she's on the cover with her boobies featured.
And the previous oldest cover of Sports Illustrated was Elon Musk's mum. I just found out from.
What was she doing on the cover?
Yeah.
She was July 20. She's a model. I mean, she wasn't just like Elon Musk's mum. I'm not just getting a celebrity mother.
His mother's a model.
Jackie Stallone turning up in the Big Brother house.
May Musk.
May Musk.
You think that he would sort of like help her out so she doesn't need to model anymore?
It's weird because
I think she's doing it for herself.
It's strange because he's not. Anyway,
you think he's not, but she is. Really? She is an attractive woman. Anyway, we'll quickly squeeze this one in, as Elon Musk's mum might have said once. We've got the Express now, and Germany is furious with the rest of Europe. This is bound to end well, Josh.
We are no longer darlings of Europe. Bitter Germans demand Eurovision boycott. When were they the darlings of Europe?
Terrible offensive accents.
What is going on there? Basically, they scored Actually, they scored 18 points, but they came last. It's a bunch of times. But this is actually, let's get some conspiracies going on, because after coming last, then like the next day, they then approved the ambitious 2.3 billion military aid package to Ukraine. Right. So they obviously were like, wait a minute, If they'd only done that like the week before,
2 days before,
they would have got loads more votes.
Yeah,
It's
like
because,
Britain did last year.
Yeah, good luck
It's
next
so
year.
messed up because every German I've ever met has come last.
Anyway, on that
They
note,
always hold out,
on that
don't
note,
they? They always hold out.
The show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. The Daily Mail has working from home fuels UK's sick note crisis. The Telegraph has free speech at risk in trans row, Oxford Dons tell students. The Guardian has alarm as ministers target housing standards to cut asylum hotel bills. The Times has Starmer, I'll allow more homes in the Greenbelt. The Express leads with PM, you must let us deport illegal migrants. And finally, the Metro has 2.5 million too sick to work. And that's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. And we're back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Josh sitting here, me sitting there, and Scott in a wig as Diane. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Bye.
Kaboom!
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good evening. Well, as net migration approaches 1 million people per year, we have to ask in debate tonight, have the Tories failed on Brexit? At last, it's over. The Russia hoax on both sides of the pond is over. It was all a lie from the very start. Russia had nothing to do with Brexit or Trump becoming president. And we remember that 80 years ago this evening, 617 Squadron took off for the Dams raid. We'll go to Lincolnshire and think what it means 80 years on. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening. The top story tonight on GB News. The Prime Minister's office has just said the EU and the UK have agreed to strengthen their cooperation on migration and the threat posed by Russia. Rishi Sunak and the Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, have agreed to work to build an international coalition to provide Ukraine with combat air capabilities, supporting with everything from training to procuring F-16 jets. They met at the Council of Europe summit in Iceland today, where Mr Sunak has been addressing the Council and saying the world's most vulnerable people have been paying the price for unlawful migration. That's as the government tries to implement its own illegal migration bill, which is currently going through the House of Lords. The new law aims to tackle small boat crossings, sending asylum seekers back home or to a third country such as Rwanda.
UK should be at the heart of putting this agenda on the international minds of different people and institutions. That's what we'll be doing today, talking to other countries about cooperating, but also talking to the European Court. Now, part of my approach is to put new laws in place in the UK. That's our Stop the Boats bill. It's novel, it's ambitious, but I believe it is compliant with our international obligations. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the European Court is always conducting itself in a way which is fair, which is effective, which is transparent.
Well, in other news this evening, 2 poultry workers in England have tested positive for bird flu. Both cases are believed to be linked to the same farm, but there are no signs yet of human-to-human transmission. Test results show one of the workers infected is likely to have been contaminated after inhaling materials on the farm. It's unclear if the second person was contaminated after inhalation or whether or not they were just infected.